Well, isn't this just a little bit odd for everybody? Here we are in the year of our Lord and Savior 2024. Jesus is coming back soon. And I'm reviewing that manga everybody was talking about, 2 years ago, nearly to the day. Actually, it's more than 2 years ago, which is fucking insane that just came out of my mouth. Because this was the second one, right? Look Back came out first. Now, because I've got you guys up, not up on stream, I can just look this up. So we're going to look at Look Back. Now, I read Look Back, but I didn't read Goodbye Eerie when it came out. I didn't think Look Back was all that cool. Oh, it came out with the movie for a second. It said 2024. I was about to lose my fucking shit. Now, apparently this movie comes out at the end of the month. I've seen I feel like it just got announced. So I don't know what the fuck is up with that. July 19th, 2021. So that one came out like a year before that. I think they both came out before Part 2 started, right? 2022, had Part 2 started? I don't know, this prick took 2 years off and he was doing something and it was making these shitty one-shots. Is that what we think, chat? Oh my god, we'll have to see. Maybe I'll get chat right now to guess what I'm going to give this out of a 10. Everybody's got to do it. Oh my god, there was a message deleted by a moderator, by Momo Kit. And they're gone. That's crazy. Who knows? Heath is saying kill yourself YouTube, as we love to do. Would it be funny if I sent more YouTube? Haha, yeah. Remember, we've got a chat here. This isn't pre-recorded, so you're going to get me going through chat. Oh my god, Sicklet just showed up, and we're recording a YouTube video, and I bet Sicklet hasn't read the short, so he better be on his best behavior, even though he's always trying to get me to stream when he's alive and not sleeping. And here he is. He might have to wait until after the discussion. CLPL thinks I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. That's crazy. Oh my god, there's 8 viewers right now. We're famous. Anyway, I should probably check the gain on this goddamn fucking microphone. We did a lot of behind the scenes. Oh my god, the gain is so high. We got to turn that shit the fuck down. Now we sound a little bit better for everybody. Knowing Kyle, everything is a 7. Oh my god, Alita is so scared because Alita loves Goodbye Eerie. The only thing I've consumed about Goodbye Eerie that I've seen other people's opinions of, besides generally knowing that everybody likes it, is that I watched for the first time Alita's second ever digest video, his February 2023 one, where he talks about this. I also listened to him talk about Berserk afterwards again because, I was just so addicted. I'm just craving my digest from Elite that frankly fell off this year. He's doing like 25-minute episodes or some shit. He's an embarrassment. Don't worry, I'll skim it right now. Oh, he's skimming the one shot. Ari leaving? Yeah, Ari might be leaving, He's a little, after this review. My goodness. But anyway, I got it in me that I was just going to read this at some point. I don't really know why. I think it might be because it was easy to read and in one sitting, and I can add it to my media checklist so I can look really cool and get my number for the year up to about 13, I believe. So that's crazy. Follow the Twitter for that. Anyway, we've been meandering around, and this is going to be a genius discussion, so we better get into it. And actually, my first stop point here was just talking about the RE thing being the only thing I've consumed. So I have an unmolested view of my own personal interpretation of the manga. Though there's not that much interpreting to be doing. It's a lot of speculating, I guess, which is what you could call interpretation. Look Back was a little bit more interpretive, I think. But my second note here is made me want to go back to Look Back, because I am curious now. What I would think about that. I don't remember much about Look Back. I guess spoilers for Look Back. I'm not going to really spoil Fire Punch or Chainsaw Man too much, so I guess you're safe if somehow you're here but you haven't seen that or whatever the fuck. Sticklet saying, couple pages in, Mum's a freak. Mum is a real freak. You don't even know. Anyway. Because Look Back, the thing went under the door or something, and then reality and fiction blurred, and, it's all some meta stuff, but it didn't really hit me, I remember thinking. Obviously, Fujimoto's other stuff, Fire Punch, greatest manga of all time. Chainsaw Man is okay, we like it. It's like probably a low 10 out of 10. Fire Punch, a high 10 out of 10, of course. So overall, we're giving this at least a 9. I can't decide if it's a 10, but I have a whole discussion about what is a 10 coming up soon. And we'll talk about it. We'll break it down. Ciclet's just reiterating the whole manga here. Mum's gonna poo. True. This is already my favorite manga. Ciclet's freaking out. I don't think Ciclet has seen, read, or watched any Fujimoto stuff. So this is wild that this is happening right now. So Leader, you can breathe in and breathe out. Okay, I said good things. It truly was fucking incredible. I guess I have to start with the Fire Punch comparison. I don't know, do you want a summary of fucking Goodbye Yuri? It's about a kid, he's filming his dead mother dying, and then he makes it into a movie, and then it's revealed that the whole thing so far has been a movie, but then everybody hates his movie, so he wants to kill himself to get back at them, but then a girl stops him, but then the girl is also dying, just like his mother was dying, and also his mother asked him to film himself on this phone while she was dying, and Lamau, whatever. And then she films a bunch of things, and this girl is a movie file, and she really likes movies. Also a pedophile, as we'll come to find out. That's crazy. I didn't even put that together or even think about that joke before I said it, but it's kind of true and that's funny, but it's kind of probably not true, but oh my god, we'll get into it all. And then it's about him, the girl falling in love, maybe, and then it's a bunch of meta stuff, and then there's a lot of fucking, mirroring and a bunch of meta shit, and then in the end, everything's sad. That's the premise, whatever. If you haven't seen it, this is going to mean nothing to you. You shouldn't watch it. Just go and read the goddamn manga. I didn't spoil any of the real twists yet. Not look back. Goodbye Yuri and Fire Punch, I think, are the same concept executed in two different genres or sort of concepts. So Goodbye Yuri starts, and I had read the first few pages of Goodbye Yuri before, and I was like, oh, it's just a sad story. I'm such a retard thinking that there would be no twist. I thought it was just going to be really heartfelt, because that's the way people talk about it, I feel like. That's the way people talked about Look Back, so I was like, get this shit out of here. And I think when I'd given up on reading it was before I had read Fire Punch. So I just, wrote it off in my head incredibly, inaccurately. I would stress that Alidori really liked this. Alidori has to read Fire Punch. It's, my number one priority almost now. It just must happen, because this is almost exactly what Fire Punch is, but this is Fujimoto ultra metarizing, as in making very meta, the sort of the emotion of sadness. There are a type of movies where it's oh my god, loved one has cancer, let's hang out with them until they die, and then we'll all cry when they die, and it'll make everybody feel bad because everybody can very directly relate to this story. That's what I thought we were doing. But then he applies a million meta shit onto it, and then he subverts it at every turn, and then he mirrors it with the new girl, and it's almost overkill, but the part of it that's overkill is sort of what... And it just builds and builds and builds until it's basically about storytelling. And it was just using that as a setup and sort of a plot outline to make some crazy meta shit that has commentary on a million things thematically and a million things in a meta way. Fire Punch is like that, but if the original concept was a Shonen Jump action story. Leary loves those. It's perfect. In a way, Goodbye Yuri is very, very tight. It is almost incredibly tight, where everything sort of, it feels like it's so dense too, that it just keeps going, and that it's trimmed all the fat. Whereas Fire Punch meanders a lot, which is part of the point there. But it's also not. But it's also, obviously the characters in Fire Punch are a lot more fleshed out because it's just way longer. I think I obviously like Fire Punch more, but it is the same concept, and it's reiterated to me, which is kind of what this first stop point I have here gets into it, is that Chainsaw Man, and it is crazy that to me that this basically cemented that Chainsaw Man is his sanitized work and is easily the least interesting thing he's done. I'm confident that Look Back has more than I'm giving it credit for, so I'm sort of counting that in. Chainsaw Man is much more like a normal story. And there's still enough in it for it to be a million times more interesting than everything else that exists. All these fucking boring generic shows, they're just trying to do a story and trying to do it well. Chainsaw Man is still making fun of itself at every turn, making fun of stories at every turn, making fun of a million tropes and cliches at every turn. But the story itself is not structured in a way for it ultimately to circle into this massive meta thing. I think Chainsaw Man's like half of Chainsaw Man's priority is this stuff, and then the other half of it is to actually have a story and a plot and some characters and a journey, and eventually I think a theme that's going to resonate. It's a lot more consumer friendly, obviously. And part of it's like, Fujimoto sold out when he made Chainsaw Man. He made a piece of shit show for normies, which is crazy, because Chainsaw Man is fucking wacky. A million times more wacky than most of the other things you'll ever consume. But the fact that this is like Fire Punch again, kind of, and a lot of the visual language is very similar to Fire Punch. Visual language is not the right. Visual motifs. Obviously, the visual language is like Fujimoto's style, which is the same in most of his works. What was I saying? Oh, like, in everything, and even in Chainsaw Man a little bit, the cinema being this, like, incredible, slightly abstracted, like, metaphor for climax is, like, crazy. And if you tie that into the fact that he's finally getting a movie made, like, by the end of the month, is, like, crazy. Though I'll talk about Fujimoto specifically a lot more later. I have it in a different dot point. Remind me to bring up that stuff. But yeah, I would say this all cemented to me the fact that this is Fire Punch again, that everything in the appeal of Chainsaw Man is 100% correct. The video that I've been making and teasing for the last 7 years. And I am sort of like, it's like my smartest idea ever was that I tinkered this all out of Chainsaw Man before seeing his other stuff. Because if you had seen his other stuff and you go into Chainsaw Man, you would be like, well, obviously this is all meta commentary immediately. But I got it without doing any of the back homework. Sicklet be spamming the plot in the chat, I think. How would you describe his style of dialogue, Kyle? Is he, like, derealizing right now? He's just trying to figure it out. Mum's going to turn into a ghoul, right? Oh, my God. Sicklet's just got it all figured out. It's saying we've ripped off Tokyo Ghoul. I don't know why, but the toothbrush panel is so sad. True, Sicklet, true. I do remember I feel like if you were to bring up any panel right now, I'd be like, yeah, I remember it. But I was not going to bring up that toothbrush panel in this fucking review at all. But let me just reiterate on this first fucking point to see if I got everything. It's more fire punchy. It's crazy to me that Chainsaw Man is my sanitized work. I should read his older works. I know Miller has, true. Right now, I'm pretty much caught up on everything Fujimoto has ever done, but his little, like, one-shot collections that are from when he was a real young little man. So we can get into that soon. I probably intend to do that pretty intently. How this all affects the appeal of Chainsaw Man, we talked about that. The idea in the appeal of Chainsaw Man is sort of that, like, this is clearly written by a person that has seen a million stories and is aware of the general state of media criticism right now and is very in tune with, like, a very informed type of audience that has seen a lot of things and what will surprise / not surprise them and what they want and don't want and sort of things like that, and how to lead that type of person on. Because this Goodbye Eerie, I don't think, like, sometimes, you have a story and it's universal, bro. Everybody should love it. Goodbye Eerie is not a story like that. I feel like 90% of people would read Goodbye Eerie and get to the end and be like, why did explosion? What the fuck just happened? This is retarded. Like, if you got your mother or your girlfriend or something to read this, they'd be like, kill yourself now and leave me alone. And this is bullshit. And that way it's sort of, and I was comparing it a little bit to this in my head. It's kind of like the discourse around modern art, about how modern art is just like, they just shit on a canvas and some idiot paid $25 trillion for it. You're all losers. We need to get back to Renaissance paintings. And it's just sort of like a taught language to understand this type of stuff, and it's super niche, and there's nothing about it that is inherently better. A lot of people in the mindset that we are in to understand a story like this, or the type of people that can sort of understand and appreciate like modern art, where it's just seems like splattered paint everywhere. I think a lot of the people in those mindsets can get very arrogant in their thinking about what these fucking low-life pieces of shit normies don't understand, because they don't have media literacy like me to understand all the great references and shit like that. Now, obviously, I'm a true egalitarian here, and I think not all of it is equally meaningless, so you can have any opinion you want, etc., etc. Just to get myself out of, the woodshed here. But it is interesting. It is a learned behavior, and because humanity is relatively similar in most people, we can then like touch on broad strings of this niche of people that have also gone through similar life experiences to us to get to this point to understand the structures of general things, or at least understand how we understand structures and how we would later subvert that, etc., etc. And this is also, obviously there's a lot of meta commentary in the actual manga about this, where, and I think this is the most direct there ever is. Like, Fire Punch has some stuff like that. It's a lot funnier in Fire Punch. It's a lot less pointed in Fire Punch 2, where, like, there's literally scenes of, like, a normie being brought up to speed on how to understand how we understand movies, or he's like, where Eri to, can I even remember the guy's name? It's like Yuko or something, right? Where she's teaching him, like, what a structure of a movie is and stuff. And I think I ended up thinking it was sort of a metaphor. Those sort of interactions were like a metaphor in Fujimoto's mind of his educated self and his uneducated self. Now, again, this is reading into the author a lot, which we're going to talk about later. But I think it's like, well, Fujimoto probably really liked movies ever since he was little, even before he had seen movies or really understood what they were. And his type of movie would be like, oh, we're filming a thing. And then a crazy explosion at the end. That's kind of funny. And there's no rhyme or reason. It's sort of just all impulse. And yeah. And then it's sort of the other side of him, which later, like, because he was so into movies, started watching a lot of movies and then started getting into film criticism and then fucking came around to creating once again. There's sort of the back and forth between Yuri and Yuko, or whatever his name is. Where he's trying to come up with an idea now that he's seen a lot of movies and he's having trouble, and she's like, no, this is boring, this is lame, or whatever. It's sort of like a criticism of understanding movies the way we do, which is something I've very much come into now, where I've sort of adopted the ultimate subjectivity shit and just, like, removed any pretension about any of this being serious. Is like, you have to sort of get back. Like, now that you're armed with the knowledge, you have to, like, forget it all in order to make something interesting. And, Fujimoto, his art very much reflects that. Like, a lot of it is, like, intrinsic, impulsive relatability. And that can sort of only come out, I think, removed from a lot of storytelling cliches and how things are usually presented in stories. Now, obviously, this whole thing is like a critique of the false impression made by telling stories and how infallible memories are and how easily to rewrite they are and how, like, easy it is to obfuscate the truth. And I don't even think, and like with a lot of Fujimoto things, I don't think it's really coming down, like, as a moral critique about how movies are bad or something, or, like, home movies are bad because they'll have you embody an idea in sort of this glorified way you choose to present it in. But, like, it's just, like, stating it and then displaying descriptively the emotion of realizing that and re-experiencing that, which is kind of what the whole last bit is about, I think. But anyway, this probably sounds a lot of fucking confusing bullshit right now. My next note point here is after sun influence, because in Goodbye Yuri, we're doing a lot of shit through a camera's lens, and the way it's illustrated in the manga is pretty genius, where it'll do like a distorted, like it's an old video footage thing, for you to understand that, oh, right, this is being filmed right now. And this is also done similarly in After Sun. After Sun, the movie, it is a movie from 2022. It's a Scottish movie about a little girl and her dad, and they go on a holiday, etc. It's a very artsy movie, so it's not much more exciting. Oh my god, Ciclet's still going off. This is I'm doing a little monologue over here about pretentious nonsense, and Ciclet's probably over here, and you're all distracted, audience. I know you're just watching Ciclet. It would also be funny for me to go back and read all of his shit afterwards. Goodbye Yuri came first. It did, Heath. I looked it up. But yeah, they're very similar. Also, another thing I think Alita should watch now is After Sun. I'll put it on his little fucking wheel thing. Very similar in a lot of regards. After Sun is not nearly as meta, but it has the same... It sort of ends up, without the meta, coming to the same sort of thematic discussion about like memory and like how things are represented and looking back through old footage and whether or not and then you sort of, After Sun at the end, you question whether or not anything that happened in the movie was real or whether or not it was just a perspective piece, which is basically what you're supposed to do at every single turn in Goodbye Yuri. So yeah, they're very, very similar. It's interesting because I was like, Fujimoto loves movies. I'm sure he saw the movie and then made this manga and it's a bit of a reference. But it turns out it was the other way around, I guess. I think there's... and Alita already talked about this in his review a little bit. I think I've come up with... I think the best way to describe Fujimoto's style when he does things, and this is more so the case in his one-shots, though he incorporates it a lot in Chainsaw Man. And it's kind of genius, because now that I think about it, I've never really seen it done in manga too much. Fujimoto does this thing where he repeats, like, panels. In Goodbye Yuri, he does it for pages sometimes, like when they're eating dinner, or like the darkness for the time skip bit towards the end. And there's a bunch of other examples, and he does it in a bunch of his other things. It is a very cinematic way to do manga, because what happens when you see these images is it processes in your mind, even though you're probably going to scroll through them really quickly. And the first time you're going to scatter through to see if anything is changing or if there are any little details you're missing, and then you're just going to scroll through them. Like when you get to the blank pages, you do see it, you process it, and then you scroll through it, and then you get past it in like a second. But in your head, you're connecting it to cinematic language, or like the language of film, and it makes you go, oh, this is like a long period of time passing, or this is like holding on a shot for a long time. But it doesn't actually have to take a long time because your brain is so familiar with cinematic language that it understands it. And it's like genius. And it's the only way you could possibly do that in manga. Because in manga sometimes they'll have like a scene and then they'll have a bar in the middle that's just black and it's supposed to be like a cut. It's also supposed to be time passing. And you sort of get it. And you sort of process that it's the same effect that Fujimoto is going for here, but the act of putting it on multiple pages cements it, because you have to scroll through it for a second or flip through it. Well, now everybody reads manga online in a vertical line, just like me. And it just, I don't know, it just captures the exact same feeling that holding on a long shot of nothing in a movie would give. And it's like having that idea initially is insane. It's such a great idea. It's a very cinematic manga, Fujimoto, that he creates. It's crazy. I kind of got a pee chat, but I don't want to fucking pause. So hopefully this discussion will distract me enough until I can pee. Anyway, peeing, the bane of my existence. Anyway, we're going to move on to something else here. Okay, well, we're talking about ratings now in the stop point. I realized like 3/4 of the way through, 3/4 of the way through, that this might be a 10. And I then realized that I have that moment with 10s a lot, where I'll be like 3/4 through it, and it's a weird feeling, because it's not like a realization that, oh my god, this is a 10 that we're watching right now. But it's a realization that this could be a 10 if we don't fuck it up. And then you start getting a little nervous, and then you start to see things that make it seem like it's wobbling. I will say I don't think the ending resonated with me to the level that it would if it was a 10. So that's why I'm tentative in giving it a 9. But also, it's so interesting thematically that it almost bumps it up to a 10, despite me thinking the ending is a little flat, kind of. But the ending also reinforces all of the thematic stuff. It's very weird. And I don't know why I feel this way. But yeah, it was sort of a realization about a realization that I had with when I think I'm watching a 10. Now, recently, in like the last year and a half, I've been complaining massively that like I can never be pleased anymore and everything is like a 7 out of 10 to me, and the only things I like are the things I rewatch and everything else. Because I went through a period there where for like 2 years, everything I watched I gave like a 10, and I was like super like good faith and what do you call it? It's something like, it's a word like that. Very good faith, very complying, very I'm never gonna remember the fucking piece of shit word, but very good faith, I guess, is the only synonym I can think of when reading things, and took like the most out of things and actively tried to do that. And then I sort of fell out of it. Content, no, not content, Heath. Very. Now we're back on the word meme. Very it's like a synonym of good faith. I don't know. Where you're like going in with good faith. If I say good faith again, somebody fucking shoot me. But anyway, yeah. So it was cool when I was reading it. I was like, oh my god, we could actually be breaking the dry spell here. Is this a 10? But then I think I memed myself out of it, chat. Oh no. Anyway, it's just a little thing. Because I think, yeah, it's like I always have that thought when I'm watching something that I like, that I'm a 10. That's a 10, and I'm like, holy fuck, this could be a 10 right now. And then I start panicking, and then I start noticing things that I don't really like, and then I'm like, oh. But usually it always ends up in being a 10, and it's like, oh my god, you're just so on the right track. You should trust your first instinct. Those like little doubts that crept in were retarded. Get rid of them. But this time it didn't really have that effect come the end. He should have made this manga a movie. Sicklet over here. Whatever I was being, as in being good faith, Sicklet is the opposite. He's always grumpy. He was making the Tokyo Ghoul references before. Can you believe him? He thinks Griffith did nothing wrong too. My goodness. Anyway. Now I have some vague notes that are going to be like specific moments that I'm kind of reflecting on / thematic points. So this dot point reads, it's about perception, how people view things, how memory works, and how it's entirely fallible. And there's a mass meta to it all. I feel like we vaguely talked about all of this already, and I don't really remember anything specific that I should bring up to deepen them. Though I will say, I didn't nearly prepare enough for this review. I thought I was going to have like an hour to go back through it and make more extensive notes. But then I realized I think I would just be reiterating my literal beat by beat, thought by thought reaction to the manga as I was reading it the first time. Because it truly is all about the journey it takes you on and how you're constantly readjusting what you think is about to happen. And it constantly feels like the manga is ahead of you or Fujimoto is ahead of you. And that feeling is so good, chat. I got it with like The Last of Us Part 2, with Fire Punch, even with Chainsaw Man, with this now. It's just an unparalleled good feeling of literally it's subversive and doesn't do what you expect, and therefore it's good. Yes, write that down. Oh my god, what was I saying? I glanced over at chat, lost my fucking train of thought entirely, and will never remember what I was saying. I give up, I guess. Well, what the fuck was I saying? I'm not giving up yet. I actually have not a fucking one thought about what I was saying 30 seconds ago. So I guess we'll just move on and hope it comes back to me as all my notes are incestuous. I think I was talking about notes, right? And I was saying I'll beat by bit, reaction by reaction. Oh my god, I made myself remember with a keyword, chat. I'm a robot. But yeah. And it's at every point you're sort of understanding the thematic implication because it's very like a relatable thing. Like whenever they're talking about the perception of somebody or how somebody wants them to film their final moments and how you would be sad in that moment, it's all very descriptive and real, brother. It's so relatable. We love it. The website just downloaded something on my computer, Cyclist says. Uh-oh. My next up point here is about Fujimoto's women. And how restrained he was with Makima to give her basically no personality, which is funny. Iri is a lot like Isa. She's also a lot like Togata, who is basically her character from Fire Punch, who's really into movies and films. Well, I guess Togata is kind of both the main characters, true and base, because she's also trans, right? Crazy. Because I guess we'll talk about Togata now, even though she's not a woman. Crazy. Where do we start? The idea of filming yourself and how Fujimoto portrays filming yourself. I have a note about this later, but I guess I'll just say it here and then we'll reiterate it later. The way he does it is incredible, and very specifically descriptively real in a way that's like insane to see reflected on screen. Togata's introduction in Fire Punch is like we cut away to this random character and she's introducing herself like it's a YouTube video. And it's just the same way and it has the same tone to the when Yuko or whatever the fuck his name is. It's Utah, I think. I don't know. It starts with a Y, I'm pretty sure. When he starts talking in front of the camera for the first time, I think it's on the steps, right? That whole demeanor, it's very reminiscent of that Togata introduction scene. It's almost like the same scene, except completely different in terms of contents. But it's like, holy fuck, it's a Togata scene when I first saw it. And there's something about the way he does it. It's just so, like, it's like the character understands that there's an audience, so they sort of have to pretend that they're a responsible person. So, like, in this, he's like, and let me tell you something about life, guys. And he's like this little tyke kid, and it's like, the fuck does this little shit know about life? But he has to pretend that he does because he's a person on camera, and to be on camera is to have some sort of authority. And that ties into everything about the movie thematically and how you do perception and how things on camera are all fabricated and how this isn't actually a true representation of himself because he's playing it up a little bit because he's like there's an audience there and it ties into everything. It's like, oh my god, how do you even lay this out for it to be discussed? It's so dense and layered on top of each other in this goddamn fucking motherfucking one shot. So both of the characters in this are very Togatari. Isa comes into play not really in any specific way. Is she very much like Iri or the boy? But all of Fujimoto's characters, and specifically the girl characters, are... The only way I can describe them is like they're quirky. But they're actually quirky, where they have really weird quirks. Like, whenever she would... Like, the one that comes to mind is when Iri, like, sees when the boy filmed himself pooping. And obviously this is a callback to the beginning when Mum was pooping, and we're not allowed to see that. But he did it. Also, Fujimoto is so good at poses because, like, the pose he's doing while he's shitting is so, like, has so much attitude and characterization in it. With Yuri, at first she's like, oh, that's gross, but she's laughing as she's saying it's gross, and she's, like, into it. And it's, like, quirky, Lamau. But there is a quirkiness of, like, girl likes gross thing, but it's not that quirkiness. It's, like, a unique type of that quirkiness. And it's like, oh my god. It's like a manga made by a person with a fucking brain, oh my god. With actually something unique to portray through his characters. And it's just like, oh, it's just so refreshing. It's like, you're back in the good space, you know, where good things are made. And obviously Isa has a lot of those, and I think that's how she was at first very relatable. I can't think of a single example though. Isa was also very grumpy, and that's very cool. Now that I think about it, maybe this Isa point was not that good, but who gives a fuck? My next stop point here is the Fujimoto isms, which is again, I think, quirkiness. Like there's one shot where the kid is just like, oh, and here's a scrape I got. And for whatever reason, that's like the biggest Fujimotoism of all time. It's such like a little boy thing that is possible. Like you can see a little boy being like, yeah, I got a scrape, it's cool. You also see a little boy going, I got a scrape, I'm going to cry now, and etc. And it's just like, for him to think that's a notable thing to film. And also he starts filming like random cats. And I don't know, it's just got this like boyhood energy to it. And it's like so well captured. And it has to be very hard to capture that as an adult. And it's just like, it's breathtaking that he has such a big brain to be able to portray this. And everybody go, oh, it's like a relatable brother. She looks like a mix of Fami and Isa. She does do the Fami pose. So yeah, those are both true. Oh, and the explosions are also a Fujimoto-ism, where it's like, it's wacky and it's out of nowhere, and then it's sort of like, but it resonates on sort of an inherent level, and it's like, oh, this is sick. Yeah, such a great way of like cutting through the existential shit to get to some sort of innate emotion, and it's insane. He's a little wizard, and what's he gonna do next? Then I have a note about our good friend Alita Ari. It says, Ari came away from it wanting to see Fujimoto interviews, and a lot of his work leads to a wondering about the author. I think this is absolutely fucking true. The whole time you're like fascinated by the cult of personality that is Fujimoto. And me and Alita Ari are very similar in the fact that we usually don't like to bring up authors very much, especially when you're doing like an analysis. Because at the end of the day, you don't really know him or anything about him. Or her. Or they. Or them. And it's just silly, and you end up writing yourself into a corner, and every Evangelion video essayist thinks they know Hideaki Anno because they have this weird archetype of him just being this depressed guy in his head. And it's like, man, did Anno put this in because it reflects his depression and his relationship with his father? Oh my god. And like when you do this Fujimoto worship, you're not really doing that, but it's like, Larry said at multiple points, he's like, I want to know why Fujimoto went down this path and why he did this. And there is something to his work that makes it almost seem like it's somewhat autobiographical. Now, obviously, everybody's work is like very autobiographical because you can only portray emotions that you at least understand or have witnessed, even if they're not internal to yourself. But usually it's probably internal to yourself. Like everybody's story is has their descriptive reality in it, and everybody's is slightly different, and they highlight something slightly differently universal, and it's all interesting and stuff. And everybody's like voice and how something like that is portrayed is different. It's all fucking sick, and I looked down at chat again, lost my fucking train of thought, chat. Can you fucking believe it? Fujimotoisms. Oh, and there's something specific about how he writes that leads you to wonder about him. And I wonder if that's intentional or if it's just that he has such an interesting, like, artistic voice that he's just lucked himself into this. It's kind of crazy. Something to think about, I guess. Now I think it's a bunch of like scenes because I've got how frustrating the talk with the teacher is about disrespecting the mother. Everybody was very mad about that. Ciclet was mad about that in chat. I was mad about that when I was reading it. Alita Ari mentioned it specifically in his review. Everybody was like, fuck this guy. Because initially at the point, and it's good because there's another big thing that I somehow haven't mentioned in this, and that my favorite thing ever, mass recontextualization happens a lot in this manga too. And with the recontextualization comes the recontextualization of what you're trying to figure out the theme to be. And oh my god, it's just so fun to sit there and try and figure out, and you're having 1,000 thoughts a second while you're reading something. Oh my god, just like The Last of Us Part 2, this is fucking crazy, brother. So at this point, you think like, oh, he's obviously dealing with how sad he is that his mother is dead with the explosion stuff, and it's like hiding that he ran away, and like obviously you should all be able to see this, and the fact that you don't see this is really pissing me off, and everybody grieves in different ways, and everybody says that, but these guys don't get it, and everybody's making fun of him and thinking he's disrespecting his mother, and it's like pissing you off real bad. But then later it's also high, because that, if you think the point of that scene is to like highlight that everybody grieves differently, but that everybody grieves differently is some boring bullshit that everybody says, and Fujimoto ain't interested in that shit, brother. And so later when it's recontextualized that the mother was like horrible, it's like a commentary on how everybody has like this respect, this inherently illogical general consensus respect for mothers, and that everybody's mother must be nice, for them to sort of assume that you are disrespecting the mother, and that the mother couldn't have done anything to him to make him like try to disrespect her in this manner. Not that he was actually trying to disrespect her, but it's like annoying, and it makes you hate those people for a whole different reason, for the same sort of like inherent stupid belief that mothers are good. And it's like, yeah, fuck mothers. We hate mothers here. That's not actually the point, but it brings out a disdain that is reflected in it. You understand the fucking point. I'm going to explain this goddamn shit to you guys. The way that the beginning of it is structured is you're waiting for the big subversion. Because obviously it's a very like boring story. It's not boring, it's a very generic story about, oh, sad that the mother's dying and we're filming it. Now, if you were just watching this and you didn't know and by watching I mean reading, who Fujimoto was, you would be like, oh, this is just a sad story about cancer, okay. It's okay, and it hits on all the beats to sort of try and trick you into thinking it's doing that. And then obviously the first one is the explosion, and you're like, oh my god, here's the Fujimotoism. Now, initially I thought maybe he actually blew up the fucking hospital, and this was going to be some wacky, like, this guy blows up hospitals, like, one shot, which is interesting. But then you're like, oh my god, it's like a movie, and like, oh, he's covering up his sadness or whatever, and that's a little bit more interesting. But then the subversion doesn't actually come because it is part of the movie, and then there's like a cute girl who's talking to him and is like talking to him more than the other people who talk to him, and you're like, oh my god, this is the trope where like the girl who's a little awkward too likes the awkward guy, and they're gonna fall in love and stuff. But she's not Eerie, she's just Eerie's friend, as we find out later, and she's actually like, because she starts it off with like, oh, my mother died before, and you're like, oh, she's gonna understand and relate to him, but then she's like, and that's why I fucking hate your shit the most, because you disrespected it, and how could you do that? And it was like, because it even set up the boring subversion and then subverted it. It was like genius, and Fujimoto was very good at this, of building on building, of we're subverting in the subversion, subverting the subversion, and it's like, oh my god, but it's like real. It's not like a meme that I just said. He actually did it and thought out. Crazy, and has the media knowledge to know about. It's just. I'm coming right now, chat. Coming, I am. But then obviously it does start to happen where it is Eerie, and she does kind of do that, but there's a little bit of a tinge difference there, and it's unique enough for you to be like, well, now where is this going? And then you wait, and then the subversion happens later, and then maybe even the bigger subversion happens with the vampire shit later. It's just fucking wacky, brother. It's just fucking wacky, and what a fun time to read. They weren't mad because it disrespected a mother, Kyle. Oh my god, Sicklet's gonna skim this manga and come in and pretend to contradict me. I won't be having any of that. The dad said that you shouldn't disrespect a dead person like that. Yep, I'm the lightning thief. I don't know what the fuck Sicklet is talking about. I guess I am the son of Poseidon. That sounds like some lightning thief shit or something. I remember that book or something. It's been made into a series, I hear. Anyway. Wee girl likes him. The second cut back to the theater watching is incredible. It reminded me of the same feeling I got with the theater scene in Fire Punch, which is both of them deconstruct stories so much that it risks you not being invested. And Goodbye Eerie is almost more so with this, that it's calling itself out constantly for like the ways in which it's getting you to feel for the characters, but by the end it still has you feeling for the characters. And I don't want to spoil the Fire Punch theater scene, but the Fire Punch theater scene is sort of the climax of the whole manga. Not really, because it happens about halfway through. it's a big like death thing or whatever, and it's like proof that like you still want to kill yourself that this character's dead, more so than even if the story was taking itself hyper seriously, like something like Berserk. Or Berserk has some comedy in it, but it is so interesting just to bring up Berserk that like Berserk isn't trying to do anything that anything in here is trying to do. And it's wild that, like, storytelling is that diverse. That, like, this is about fucking with the form to try and destroy it, but ending up almost back in the same place. Which is kind of a lot of what Goodbye Eerie is about. God, the metaphors go so deep. I nearly said Alita, like he was the only one here, but there's a whole audience here, Alita. Stop being selfish. Have you seen Casino? Yes, I've seen Casino, Ciclet. But that's besides the point. Don't get me off track here. I was talking about the metaphor because we kind of end up in the same place at the end of the manga, right? We're back in the thing. And it's like, I think maybe part of the idea of the manga might be that everybody ends up in the same place, even if you go through this, like, I'm going to hyperanalyze every movie I've ever seen, then become a critic, then start creating, and you sort of just end up at the explosion again, which is the cool original thing that you had when you were completely uneducated. How did that reflect to the thing I was explaining? Where it was like, oh, you try to deconstruct stories so much to, like, call out how people care about characters, only to get back to this hyper-emotional moment where we're caring about a fake character dying. Which is like, most stories try to just play it incredibly straight to get you to that moment, and here we are going zigzagging and destroying the fucking line as we go, and ending up in the same place. It's like circular and stuff or something. It's like the most genius thing that's ever been written. But 500 at first, so it's better, you know. Fuck Goodbye Eerie. Can you believe Chainsaw Man? Why is he wasting his time on shitty Chainsaw Man? This fucking boring, straightforward nonsense. Anyway, he'll finish it soon, okay? Still a 10. Subversion, the story ends up... I read that one. This is where I talk about the filming yourself and the put-on personality of somebody who's filming themselves is interesting, how there's a sense of responsibility when there's a perceived audience. The theater scene is obviously very fire punch, I have written down. Isa makes Chainsaw Man worth it. Yes, Leori, you're speaking the truth. Actually, Denji's the best. Immediate hints that Iri is sick is also interesting. Like, she's monologuing at the beginning about, like, no, if you kill yourself, you kill yourself at that hospital because the doctors are really mean. And you're like, well, how do you know that the doctors are really mean? Are you sick, bitch? And yeah, of course she's sick, and it's like the same repeated process. And at this point, you're like, oh, because you're still waiting, because I think I have a note down here later about this too. You are waiting for the eventual massive emotional gut punch. And it kind of doesn't happen. But it kind of trips over itself into thinking, and obviously it's not actually tripping, but like into thinking, because now you're like, oh, Yuri's here and she's going to get sick and die because obviously she's sick, and this time we're going to be in love, and even after the reveal that the mother is like a bad person, which isn't until long into the Yuri relationship, then you realize like, oh, the reason why we're repeating the storyline is because this is going to be the actual time where somebody dies and he's going to try and film their final moments or something. But then we subvert that again, and then you think the gut punch is when you see him in the future and he's like, yeah, I had a whole family, they're fucking dead, same with my dad, I'm all alone, I'm going to go kill myself. But then he doesn't kill himself, and then the emotional gut punch is kind of the explosion at the end, and it's like, what? It's just like, it like delays it, and you're sort of on edge waiting for it, and it just creates this like, well, where are we going type of like, you're trying to figure it out as you're reading, and it's so fun. And on the back of that, the shot of her falling into the water at the beach is insane. Obviously, there's the big beach moment in Chainsaw Man 2. There are like these clearly like symbols that Fujimoto resonates with, like the beach or the theater, that sort of reoccur in his stories, and sort of abandoned buildings, and like even like the mundanity of like hospitals and shit like that. But yeah, this one on the beach, like, I don't know. There's something specifically picturesque about the image we've got on the screen now. That, like, you buy that she's dead and you buy that it's, like, beautiful. It's just very picturesque, and it, like, it's another thing like the cinematic way he does the repeated pages, where it's like, it makes you feel like this is a different style of something you're seeing. It's very hard to explain, but it's just like, you sort of sit there in wonderment, and you're like, oh my god, what is this image? She's fucking dead. That's crazy. And it just, like, goes through your... It's fucking crazy. I haven't figured that part out yet, chat. One day I'll figure it out. I'll make a video about it. That fucking feeling you get when you're reading it and you hit that page, it's the only thing... I've never had an experience like it in a manga. And I can't really think of an experience like it in anything else. It was crazy, bro. Then I just have Your Movie Was Awesome, and sort of in the opposite way, this is when Yuri tells him that the movie was awesome. Where it's like the opposite of the emotional gut punch, but in the positive way, and you're like, oh my god. But also, it's like a generic thing where eventually somebody had to tell him, but we subverted it 2 times to get here. For somebody to tell him, like, oh, I thought your movie was good, and for somebody to, like, understand him. But then, obviously, it is recontextualized at the end. Do we even know if Yuri actually understood him in this moment, or is this just his perception of what she wanted her to be? The same thing happens with the dating stuff later on, but we'll talk about that. It's incredible, the subversion with the dad talking scene, where it's like, it's incredible how believable the talk with the dad going sour is, because you're waiting for the emotional gut punch, and you're like, the dad's been like such like a trooper up until this point, but he also, the way he's drawn, he's very downtrodden. It's like, if they wanted him to snap and be evil at any moment, I would totally buy it, and they did fake it out. And then it's the only time they do the subversion where they reveal that they were filming before, like, you realize it, and it's like, oh, it was just a scene for the movie, and it's actually such a great, like, moment. It was fucking sick. That scene was great. The love story is hinted at very well too when they're watching the movies, and it's like, they got good chemistry. They're like hanging out and stuff. This is a love story, guys. This is obviously where we're going. His mom died, now his girlfriend's gonna die. It's just so sad. And like, there's the one scene where eventually they're like, it's one of the many, like, we're watching movies sitting on the couch, and at one point she puts her head on her shoulders, but it's also still kind of second guessy because they don't linger on it too much, and it's not the head on the shoulders, like, then you put your head on her head. That wasn't even a sex joke, chat. That's actually what you do, you know? And obviously you don't do sex. That's bad. And then later, obviously, they're like in bed posing for a photo and stuff, and it sort of escalates, and it's like, and it's like, oh, will you meet my dad type thing? And even at one point, it's like, did you just confess to me? It's like, no, I love your movies, pussy. It's like the playful back and forth. But then the line, "we never dated," that was just for the film while he's talking to her other friend, is fucking incredible. The tone of it and how it's delivered, and this is another, like, recalling the language of cinema thing, is that he's saying it from behind the camera, and somebody's saying something like, not earth-shattering, but like story meta-shattering from behind the camera is so much more powerful, just because obviously, oh my god, it's behind the camera, he's like directing Lamau. But also it's like, it like cuts through it with such honesty, and like doesn't care about your feelings. It's like such a harsh moment of like, what? No. And it's like crazy. It was just a great scene. The being behind the camera I have written down here gives it such an air of authority. The mum twist was great. I think a lot of the mum stuff is like, it's almost too honest to be true. And when you see it happening, you're like, no, this is like, there has to be something more here. And then it's like, but it's also not so over the top that it feels evil. Like, it breaks the sort of tone we're going for here. It was handled and done so well. Fucking crazy, bro. And then we have my final dot point. So after this, I want to talk to the chat a little bit, and then maybe we'll be out of here. I think we've been going for nearly an hour, which is about what I expected. The ending is a bit off to me, but I think I just have to think about it more. Another explosion to cover up an emotional failing, ? Now, I've sort of talked through, I don't know what it is about the thing. Alita made a big deal in his review of something that I didn't even note or like at all was that at the end they say goodbye to each other, but the dude doesn't say goodbye Eerie like as the title drop. Now Elite Arie's always gone on about title drop, so that's a very unique Elite Arie thing to read into it. It's also something I can think being intentional, so pat yourself on the back, maybe Elite Arie. But also it didn't resonate with me, so it can't be real. You know, this is all actually about me. Which is actually another point I think some of the meta is making in this is about how everything, like for you to betray a person unfaithfully on screen to what you want them to be is to sort of make everything about you. And I think it's very easy to do that as a creator and as an audience member. And I think a lot of that is being commented upon. I think if I had more time to prepare for this situation, I would have sort of outlined themes and sort of taken them to their conclusions a lot more. I think that would be a very interesting scripted video. It's sort of like, but even then, you don't even have to use Goodbye Eerie as a framing for it. It's just like, what is it to construct an image on a screen? Like, because the first thing they sort of teach you in film school, I would know, I did film and TV in grade 11, is something that I think everybody thinks is bullshit, but is also sort of unconsciously absolutely 100% true. That's when they tell you everything on that's in frame is intentional, and like there's no accidents, and that every little bit of background decoration is to make you feel a certain way, and to take one out would change your entire perception of something, even if it's so minuscule and like the colors and stuff. And you remember you being in your film and TV class and everybody snickering like, yeah, as if color has any meaning in film, bro. It was just blue in the background because it was blue in the background, teacher. You're reading into it too much. We've all seen the internet memes. The English teacher be having you think that this is a symbol for the actuality of the thingy, but actually, ma'am, it was just a glue stick all along. You're a retard. But it's true, bro, especially subconsciously. And that's like, why did I bring that up? That was to tie into something here about the ending. Oh, it's about drawing conclusions from themes and like, oh, everything is hyper intentional, and how that ends up being impossible to reflect reality because reality isn't constructed. It just sort of happens. And then movies are sort of trying to recapture reality and sort of this. And I think a lot of this is sort of the sad state of like how you'll never truly recapture reality. And even when Fujimoto was like, sort of capturing this weird meta-ness in this, it's not exactly how you feel experiencing it, but it's so close that it gives you this great feeling of validation for understanding that it's trying to be imparted to you. It's like fucking wild, bro. Anyway, is any of this making sense? I don't know. This is all vagary. That's what you get in great Kyle Entertainment reviews. Another explosion at the end to hide an emotional failing, or is it all a movie? Which is kind of what the explosion implies, is that this is like the whole thing is the movie, because it does the thing where you think it breaks from the movie making at many points. Thinking about it this way is more interesting because obviously the kid when he's grown up looks a lot like his dad. And part of me thinks that like, oh, is it actually his dad playing him in the future? Because Eerie is still really young, so we're still shooting with her and it's just an extra scene. And we don't actually ever see the camera cut, and this is all still meta. And it's like, oh, his dad is playing him in the scene, and like that's why the situation looks exactly the same, and that's why the inside of it kind of looks similar. Though it's not exactly the same. He does have to like dust things off and put things on. But I don't know, you can take or leave that interpretation and stuff like that. Also, there's all the vampire stuff, which is like, oh, it's like we're constantly throughout the movie they're talking about putting in a pinch of fantasy, and that's how you actually make like an interesting story, and that's like the hypothesis for why the explosion at the beginning works. It's like, is the vampire stuff just bullshit for that so they can have a happy ending kind of tacked onto the story that didn't have a happy ending because Yuri actually was sick and she died and we all filmed this and like whatever. It depends how autobiographical you think this is to like the creation of the actual thing, because above all or beneath all the meta stuff and all the recontextualization and all the how it's structured thing is the fact that this is an idea somebody had, which is Fujimoto, presumably, unless he stole it. So it's like, is that literally like, is Fujimoto making it part of the meta? As in, like, this is all a movie that, like, he created. And because he created a movie like this, it is plausible that the boy in the universe could create a movie like this. Does your head in, doesn't it? There's so many layers. But yeah, it's crazy and stuff, bro. He didn't want to go back to the fake room he had created. Oh yeah, because obviously another thing is like this Yuri has got a no mind wipe, but she's pretending to be the Yuri that's in the movie, but only that guy knows that that actually isn't how she was. So now this Yuri isn't going to be how she was, so he doesn't want to hang out with her because it wouldn't be the same as when they did hang out, because this is not the real her. This is sort of the actualization of his idea of Yuri, and he's sort of uninterested by that and doesn't really want to see her. It's very interesting of like the things you created will disappoint you, especially if they became real compared to the things that you actually experienced. So again, it's like the colossal inherent shortcomings or like depressingness of movies, of all fiction really, where it's trying to recapture these feelings in reality, but truly never 100% can. Like the adulation of somebody winning a fight in the movie will never be the same as the adulation of having a fight in real life and winning or something like that. It's just like the feelings are different, and they try very hard to portray them enough that you will get it, and if you've had a feeling like that, it will resonate, but it won't be exactly the same. Plus there's the artifice of it is fake and real life is real. But obviously meta stuff tries to blur the lines between that, and obviously in the universe the fake and real movie is it's just layers on layers. It's the same thing, you know. You realize that they were both very much different people now. Yes, if we were to take this on face value that this is actually happening, him going back is obviously he's changed a lot as a person, and this is not the eerie, but it is the same body, so she's changed a lot like a person, to the fact where they can't sort of recreate the moments that they had now, or the feelings. And there's also a much more basic theme that's sort of at play here, where it's you'll never have things as they were. You'll reach for them and kind of try to recreate them, but to try and recreate things, you just gotta try to create new things. It's it'll never come back. The feeling of watching movies won't be the same, especially 20 years later or whatever. Don't even try. And it seems like he has the maturity enough to realize that and to just leave and not even bother. That's a more basic, taking things very seriously and not applying any meta lens to it. But it's definitely in there. Oh my god, battery saver. We're running out of battery here. Who knew? Anything else I got written down here? Both two very different people. He looks very much like his dad. Is this just a fake part of the movie and his dad is playing him in the future? A pinch of fantasy. So I think that is all I had written down. Anybody have anything to say in the chat, Elitery? Did I say anything wrong? Do I differ from your interpretation in any massive way? Or that you recall? Anything stand out? Did I have any genius points that made you recontextualize the whole thing? Let me all know, and maybe if Ciclet starts saying something funny because he said sex gifts, he can say other things funny now. Elitery says the ending is the best part because it's cool. Well, there you go. He's spoken, ladies and gentlemen. You can't argue with facts, or you can't argue with figures. I'm trying to do a foghorn leghorn bit, but I can't be doing it now. And also, because we're near the end, I can pee soon. I got through it without peeing, guys. Are you excited of me? So I don't have time to send videos. Well, Ciclet, we're going to end this soon. Plug it fucking in. Sexy. And no! And I'm sure Alito, you'll be streaming very soon, and we can all watch videos on his live stream. Actually, he's probably not going to do it because he's a pussy. Part of me thinks I just rambled about nothing for an hour. We'll see what happens when I upload this, and if anybody... And also, I want to see what other people think and whether or not these are similar conclusions most people have come to. You sort of have to have it laid out to make sense, I think. And I was recalling it and recalling things to write notes about, and then I skimmed through the chapter. And by the chapter, well, I guess it is a chapter. Through the manga, through the one-shot. I will say one-shots, after you finish them, it does feel like you've watched a movie, which I think is good. I think my main disagreement is that I think a normie would like it a lot. I think a normie just wouldn't understand anything of what's going on. I can imagine Moist Critical giving it a 9 or a 10. Yeah, but Moist Critical is in our universe normie. I'm thinking if I was like, Mom, read this manga. "What's a manga, honey? Shut up." And she'd be like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And I was like, what if I send this to my girlfriend? She watches movies, probably more movies than me. She doesn't really understand any of the stupid bullshit we talk about, though. I don't think she would get it. But I don't know. But even Moist Critical, I don't know. He's a bit of a fucking idiot, you know. I don't know. I was thinking I'd show my mother this. I'd show my mother this, Sicklet was saying. You have a GF in New Zealand. Sicklet, get caught up on the goddamn motherfucking law, you idiot. Now, that's a boring disagreement, Alito. You suck. Who cares about that? I don't know. I guess I'd have to see. I'm sure there's some normie reviewers. Did Chibi Reviews upload a review? But he loved it. Anyway. I think that's where we'll end things. Aliri self-admitted that he doesn't have anything interesting to say. Imagine that. I don't know. Leave a comment below telling me what you think about Goodbye Eerie 2 years later, then you can recall it from memory. Comment link. Sicklet, I'm not ending the fucking stream. I'm just ending the YouTube video. Get a clue. I've already said everything in my digest. Yeah, Leary, he didn't say nothing so fucking super interesting. He's just being a little bitch saying 5 out of 5, best thing I've read all year. It was only February. I think it ended up being the best thing he'd read. He did all year anyway. Okay, I've postured to do this outro about 3 times now. Get the fuck out of here. Tomorrow will probably be a Chainsaw Man chapter review, and then we've got a House of the Dragon preview with Alita Re coming. All great things. The greatest story ever told, Alita is telling us. But is it better than the Heavenly Delusion anime? Alita is trying to figure these things out. Support links in the description below. Thanks.